It's no secret that the gap between games journalists and players is absolutely massive and unrepairable. Gamergate was probably the main cause of this separation, but there are many reasons why games journalism has become a fucking joke today. And I'm here to talk about one of those other reasons, which is the complete absence of relatability. Games journalism on YouTube and TV in the 2000s was a big part of the culture. G4, Rooster Teeth, Machinima, and even IGN were honestly great. They cared about games for the same reason that we do, which is that games are fucking awesome. And this shared love of games between the viewer and the outlet created a sense of relatability. People who worked at these companies at the time were there because they actually played games, were probably pretty decent at games, and wanted to talk about them. And this is just not the case anymore. Many games journalists now are out of touch with the viewer in the same way that many AAA devs are out of touch with the player. And this lack of connection and relatability is one of the main reasons why people now depend on other YouTube content creators for the truth about games, and so far it has proven to be the much better alternative. Because rather than depending on major outlets to provide them with dishonest, out of touch, and biased reviews for reasons that have nothing to do with the game, they go to their favorite content creator or creators that can give them a much different and more relatable perspective surrounding the game in question. And this complete out of touch connection games media has with gamers is pretty crazy, especially when you look at what it once was. They just don't know how to be relatable anymore because of how they talk about and look at games from perspectives that most gamers don't give a fuck about, which again is why they turn to other YouTube channels for reviews and coverage. They aren't even relatable on a communication level, which is something I'll talk about later. And yes, for my example, I'm going to be using IGN because Rooster Teeth, Machinima, and G4 have gone extinct. Also, before I start this next part of the video, I just want to emphasize, I'm not saying whether these example game reviews I'm using today are good or bad, right or wrong. It's completely subjective. I'm focusing more on the tone, wording, and delivery of the reviews themselves because this is where the aspect of relatability comes in. I found a prime example of what I'm talking about the other day. I was just scrolling through YouTube and an old IGN review popped up for Halo 3, and this is what kind of sparked the whole idea for this video, because I ended up watching a decent amount of old reviews after that one, and they're kind of a pretty good representation of what games journalism used to be. Just take a listen and you should immediately hear what I'm talking about with this whole relatability aspect. It's a part where a guy's describing and talking about Halo 3's AI companions.
Also, the AI of your teammates just isn't that great. When you're playing single player, you'll have the Arbiter often as your co-op buddy just sort of being run by the AI. He's an asstard. He'll just be staring at walls sometimes, he won't shoot, he dies a lot. I'll tell you what, those Covenant guys, they like to get shot in the face quite often. He'll be dead most of the time. He's really pretty much useless, and there's no point in having an AI-controlled character with an arrow over him letting you know he's your AI buddy, unless he's actually going to be competent. This is like playing with your 4-year-old sister who's blind.
He called the Arbiter an astard and said it's like playing with your 4-year-old blind sister. And now you might be thinking to yourself, that seems unprofessional and pretty rude. And you're absolutely fucking right. Gamers are unprofessional, rude assholes, and we're proud of it. But regardless, this is the relatability factor I'm talking about. It sounds like we're hearing from someone who is sharing their genuine thoughts and opinions on a game without worrying about any external factors that may change how they actually feel about the game. But not in a million years would you ever hear something like this from IGN today. It doesn't fit into their current day business model of being passive aggressive and sucking off big game studios regardless of how they actually feel in order to keep their privileges in the games industry, which is understandable, but still not right. Another part of a different review I'll bring up is the review on X-Men Origins Wolverine. Obviously the game, not the movie.
Wolverine is all about running around and wrecking shop like a feral beast. In other words, it's very true to the character. You dash recklessly into the fray, get chunks of your body torn off, and turn baddies into a bloody mess. The repetition is disappointing, but hey, it's fun to be a badass.
This guy just sums up the game by saying, it's repetitive, but it's fun to be a badass, and then gives it like a fucking 8 or something like that. And I don't know, it's just a straightforward, simplistic talk that makes it feel most relatable. That, on top of the fact that many of their old reviews just boil down to the game being fun, which makes it even better because that's all gamers really give a fuck about. Now let's take a look at one of their most baffling reviews to date, IGN's Concord review. And I'm sorry, I know this is low-hanging fruit, but it's an easy example to use. And again, I'm using this review to prove a lack of relatability, but this time rather than tone and wording, I'll be focusing on the actual thoughts and opinions about the game because it's crazy how someone can have a wrong opinion. Not really, because there's a lot of stupid fucking people out there, but you know what I mean.
Concord isn't the most innovative or content-heavy hero shooter you could play, but with such fantastic competitive gameplay, 16 compelling characters to master, and 12 well-designed maps, it's got the makings of something that could go the distance in the months and years to come. In fact, it's a testament to its FPS chops that even while it has a virtually non-existent story and a serious need for a signature game mode, I still found myself losing dozens of hours to its PvP charms. Hopefully the live service roadmap will do its thing and show this promising shooter the love it needs to become something truly special. But right now, it's at least good enough for me to recommend trying out.
Everything this guy said is completely unrelatable, and you know how I know? Because the game is fucking dead, because nobody played the game, because it wasn't a good game. Oh, hindsight is 2020, but even if you just looked at the amount of people who played the beta for this game, you could have saw this coming from a mile away. On top of the fucking buffoonery from the review, they even self-reported with this one because they did a podcast about the whole Concord implosion and argued why they gave it the score they did by saying their reviews were on par with other reviewers' scores, which is definitely not how you're supposed to justify your coverage on the game, because you're supposed to make reviews for people, not other fucking media outlets, you fucking dum-dum. And I know they have the curse of pre-reviewing games before anyone gets their hands on them, but this doesn't disregard the fact that they have reviewers that are journalists with an agenda, instead of people who can play and understand what makes a good game, not only through their eyes, but also the eyes of the majority player. And at the end of the day, that's an issue, and part of the reason why they lost that connection with their audience. And again, I'm not saying this is the one and only reason for the downfall of games journalism, but I do think it's a pretty big one. It's a big reason why people look for other content creators for gaming coverage. It's a big reason that players in general care less about what games journalists have to say compared to back then. And it's a big reason for the lack of identity found in many major gaming outlets. And relatability definitely contributes to more than just those three things, but those are the ones that stick out to me. And nowadays, I don't think any of these major outlets like IGN, Eurogamer, etc. have much use other than posting the latest trailers for games and maybe some exclusive interviews or previews. As far as game coverage in general, there are countless better options out there. I could absolutely be wrong, but I just genuinely don't think we need them. I'd much rather watch someone like GameRanks, Spawn Wave, or Inside Games. But if you do just like to stick to these major gaming outlets for all your gaming news, hats off to you, because you're keeping them alive. But this is just something I wanted to talk about because seeing those old review videos just made me think of how different covering games was then compared to now. Games are much bigger, have more systems to them, and are just overall looked at and approached much differently than they were 15 or 20 years ago. And that's pretty expected with something as big as gaming. So I don't blame gaming news outlets for changing with the times, but for me, they changed a lot in the wrong ways. They've definitely nailed the upgrade in video quality, but not the content quality. And it's definitely more professional and larger at scale, but at the cost of its relatability factor. That's all for me though. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Outside.
We could use it to defeat enemies.